All right, hey there, folks. Since the world out there seems to be as kooky as ever, I figured I'd keep bringing book tour to you. So, welcome to Russ's Rockin' Rollercoaster, intriguing interviews with creative minds. So, for the most part on this show, we've talked about books, TV shows, and movies, but one area we've only dipped our toes to is the world of gaming. Well, tonight's the night we dive in deep. So please welcome tonight's panel as we discuss RPGs and tie-in fiction. On our panel tonight is my pal, writer of pretty much all things, and my fellow Crazy 8 Press inmate and frequent co-conspirator, Aaron Rosenberg. Aaron is an award-winning author of more novels, novellas, and short stories than I can think of, and both a gamer and a tie-in fiction author. As for RPGs, he's written for D&D, Worlds of Darkness, Deadlands, Warhammer, World of Warcraft, and Shadowrun, among others. Welcome back, Aaron.
Thanks, Russ. Always good to be here.
All right. So, also on our panel is multi-genre author Jeri Red Shepherd, a U.S. Air Force veteran. Jeri is an award-winning 15 times number one bestseller who has also written for RPGs, including Legends of Evantris, Goodman Games, Gygax Inc., and others. Welcome, Jeri.
Hi, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, and rounding out our panelists, Carlos Hernandez. Carlos is the award-winning writer of Sal and Gabby Break the Universe, Sal and Gabby Fix the Universe, and the Assimilated Cuban's Guide to Quantum Santeria. He has also written Marvel Comics characters such as American Chavez, Moon Knight, Spider-Punk, Miles Morales, Amazing Spider-Man, and Ghost Rider. And with his wife, World Fantasy Award-winning C.S.E. Cooney, he created the Negocios Infernales TTRPG. Welcome back, Carlos.
Hello.
All right. Okay, so a heads up to the folks at home. Feel free to send any notes or questions you have for me or the panel in the chat box, and we'll get to a few at the end. Okay, and before we get started, Andrew, if you're watching, this one's for you. All right, so for our panel and everyone watching tonight, full disclosure, I'm not much of a gamer, so you're going to have to forgive me for any number of mistakes about our topic tonight. And if I do, I'm sure the panel will graciously break my balls. All right. Okay, so unless there was another RPG you think was more impactful, and tell me if there is, it seems that the classic Dungeons and Dragons really put modern RPGs on the map. So my question is, what does the D&D gaming experience bring about of D&D to begin with, bring about that just entranced so many millions of fans and made Flaming Orc campaign such an intimate gaming experience? Jeri, we'll start with you.
I think it was just it really allowed people to just let the guards down. Like, so when you think about those favorite games you play, I'm talking any game. You like to play a board game. I don't care if you want to play chess or checkers or whatever it is. Like whatever it is, a card game. You sit around the table. You ask people what they love about the game, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to say it's not about the game. It's who I'm sitting around the table with, and that's kind of what D&D like capitalized on. Yes, there was all of this, there's math and there's statistics and there's all of this other, there are rule sets but really it's about like getting to tell really cool stories. It's like bring the campfire to life around the table, and I think D&D did that, and it's continued to do that, and others have played off of it. And there's even been science that shows that your brain, when you are role playing in Dungeons and Dragons or any role playing game, your brain isn't even mapping that you're rolling dice and saying your character is doing a thing. Your brain is mapping the memory of the experience. And so I think it's just getting to share those really cool adventures and experiences with your good friends.
Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. I think the reason that D&D in particular really took off is, and I'm not an RPG historian, so there probably were some that were doing similar things about the same time or even earlier. But why D&D caught on, I think, is because what it did was it took miniatures, which people were playing, and I was hardcore gamers who were doing, miniatures gaming with all these little figurines. And what happens with most people with any imagination when you're playing with little figurines is you start creating stories for them. You start giving them names and personalities and histories and things like that. And what D&D did was say, you know what, let's actually, let's go for that. Like, let's really dive into that. And so instead of just having a little figurine, you had your dwarf who had a name and had a history and had a life, and was left-handed and only used a particular axe that his father had given him and it had a name to it. All of these things, it really married the mechanics to the story, and like Jeri said, it really was sitting around the campfire and telling those stories, and especially telling them with friends. Because if you had your little figurine and you knew its backstory, but nobody else did, that was one thing. But if you're sitting there with your friends and you're talking in your character's voice and you're telling about where your axe came from and why your grandfather got it and how he made it and things like that, now you've shared the story with them and they're contributing to your story and vice versa.
Okay. And by the way, so you touched on something, Aaron. I've got another entire question all about this kind of thing, but you touched on it, so we're going to keep
Yep.
going. So, Carlos, so let's just for now, um, let's just kind of go back to let's call the origins of modern, RPGs, D&D, kind of put things on the map. What is it specifically? Either let's start with D&D, but if necessary, even more broadly, what is it about just that, the gaming experience? And maybe it is that D&D did it better or worse. I don't know. You guys really know more than me, but what really what makes it such an intimate experience that
Yeah.
captures so much the attention of so many?
Yeah, so D&D has gone through many editions, but I really love what both of my panelists have said. Aaron, you stole half my answer, by talking about what
Sorry.
Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax did.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about origins, like Gygax is a fairly problematic figure with some of his views, and those have been fairly well publicized. But in terms of designing the game, he was the perfect person for it. He was an avid science fiction reader. The Displacer Beast comes right out of a short story that was published,
Right.
and it's like, so like he drew from all of these different mythologies and created something that didn't just feel like you were only around a table with your friends, but it brought a mythos together. And for many people, it was their only experience of a mythos. If people aren't reading complicated myth or science fiction fantasy, they just aren't encountering these huge Jungian Campbell kind of ideas. And this is a way that they get embodied and presented to you in a way that you are intimate with. That's one thing. The other thing is it married acting with gambling. The gambling component of D&D
Yeah.
cannot be overstated. You are rolling dice not to see if you win or lose, but to see if you spot somebody or to see if, you are able to leap across a river. You're rolling for all of these things that are constantly tagging you. Jeri, when you mentioned the psychological stuff, it's just like all of those endorphins and all of those hormones going off when you are gambling are going off with D&D. And then just one other thing. The one thing that happens in every D&D game that I've ever played is there is lore, there is magic, there is, a deep high fantasy that you want to play. But really what it is you're tying a rope around a gnome to see if you can throw them up the castle wall so that he can hold on and you all can climb up. Just the ludicrousness of the
Yes.
D&D scheming is really the unsung hero of the game. And it's only gotten more profound over the editions when now in 5.5, D&D 5.5, there is much more theater of the mind that emphasizes a lot more role play than the crunchiness of the earlier editions.
Okay, so
Definitely.
there's a lot. You said a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. So give me a minute here.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's great. This is what I wanted. This
So
is
while you're looking at that, I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things, talking
Go.
about the gambling, right? I mean, I think you're absolutely right, because when you factor that in with your friends, right? If we're telling a story ourselves, most of the time we want to make it awesome and dramatic and we are the hero and we do everything right, right? But then the dice interfere. And the dice, suddenly you trip over your own feet, literally. You go to throw the gnome and instead he thwacks you in the head, and the rope coils around your neck. And you have your friends there to then mock you about it and to remind you of it every week after that for years
Yes,
to come.
exactly.
And that's part of that experience, is having those in jokes with your game group of, oh yeah, you're going to grab the gnome again, that kind of thing, right? It's
Right.
really, you build your mythology in your group and it
Yeah.
becomes a living thing. And I think it's so amazing. And the dice give you that randomization that you would never be able to create on your own without that outside influence.
Yeah.
Okay,
big,
Well,
so
and you
yeah,
talk about your friends mocking you, and that is they are going back to that experience. They are
Yeah.
picturing you, Aaron,
Yep.
like whatever your character is, and they're like, "Hey, so is Brutus gonna like pick up the gnome again?" And they're picturing a
Yeah.
gnome as if you had sat in your kitchen together and had real live gnome that was being thrown up a castle wall. And it's so crazy how alive these stories become in front of us when it's all interactive and you're engaging with other people in the
okay.
story together.
Yes. All right. So
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of things here that you touched on, and you all said things that I want to like grab onto for a minute. So one was, so you talked about gambling, and Aaron, I wrote the word down, but you said it first. And it's one of my favorite elements, and you guys are going to find out later in the show exactly what I mean. I know Aaron already knows, is the idea of randomness,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of times when you're playing a game of any kind, right? Whether it's a board game, it's a video game, or it's sports or whatever. The idea is I've amassed a certain skill, right, and tactics and strategies, and if I can effectuate my skills well, and I can calculate the odds. I think I have X% chance of being successful or whatnot. But when randomness comes in, you can have the best laid plans all around, and you get some wonky roll of the dice, and it just doesn't matter how much planning you've done. It's absolutely irrelevant, right? And when you marry that with what you said, I forget who said it, the theater of the mind. Now that is a really interesting component to it that I think I didn't fully appreciate it until you said it that way. And I'm going to mention something a little bit later. I don't know, understand why. Um, so you create this theater. You've got these characters, whatever they are, right? Orcs or dragons or trolls or whatever you've got going. But when you're with them, when you're on the quest with them in the theater of the mind, you have your own vision of what that looks like. And it's interesting. And this relates back to a little bit of what we're talking about offline about some of the coaching I'm doing is that we make assumptions with language. If you say orc, every person here has a picture of what an orc looks like. And those pictures are not the same. We assume they're the same, but they're not. So we have individual associations and then group associations, and then they become this real living thing, and then you throw the randomness factor into all of it. Wow, that's quite a cup of crazy you got going on there.
But Russ, there's even more because this is
Go.
why people draw their characters. Right?
Right.
This is why the art industry around D&D is so
Yeah.
prolific because
Right.
people love to have very detailed expressed ideas. And also,
Yeah.
I just want to say theater of the mind is load bearing in this definition because it's opposed to grid based. So like when you're playing with figurines, you're doing less theater of the mind. When you're doing only verbal, like at a podcast or something, then you are doing express theater of the mind. Now there's always some theater of the mind, of course, but sometimes people get really crunchy with like, you can move 30 feet. That is 6 squares on this map, so count squares, and that's a little bit different.
Okay, so I'm gonna touch on to what you guys were talking about a little bit earlier. Aaron brought this up. So a couple years ago, Aaron was actually not kind enough to invite me into a private RPG group
Haha.
that he's been involved with for years, and we did a few campaigns. But what was interesting to me was how much world building is involved and necessary
Yeah.
to make the game come to life.
Yep.
So talk to me a little bit. You touched on it a little bit, Aaron. So why don't you start there, and then we'll go with the rest of the panel. Talk to me a little bit more about the world building process within RPGs, including the elements that make the RPG and the most and the class and sorry that make the RPG shine and the most classic mistakes.
Well, so one of the things, and obviously all of us have done panels about like writing and RPGs and how they intersect fiction and RPGs. And one of the things is that when you're writing a novel, right, you're determining what your characters are doing. When you're running a game, you have no idea what your players are going to do next. Your players are going to go any which way but the way you expected them to go.
Right.
As a result, when you're writing a novel, your initial impulse is to build the world just this far, right? Because going farther than that takes a lot of effort and a lot of time, right? So you only build the amount that the character can see. You can't do that in an RPG because in an RPG, you're building like just this one hill and your characters are like, oh, we're going back over that ravine back there. And you're like, I didn't plan for a ravine. What ravine? I mentioned a ravine halfway like 3 hours ago. What are you talking about? Now you have to figure out the ravine. So it really forces you to have at least a basic understanding of the entire world,
Right.
which translates amazingly to when you're writing fiction, because then you start to have that attitude towards it. That you can't just build the little bit that your character's on. You have to really start thinking about, okay, well, what if the characters do go into that village? Well, what's in that
Right.
village? And you start realizing how to layer these things and how to go, what's crucial? What do I have to tell them up front, even if they never go near it? Like, oh, there's a mountain there, right? That one's on fire. You probably shouldn't look at that, or maybe you should, right? And then what things do you not tell them right away? It's a, it's that sort of perspective effect of
Right.
the closer you
So
get
there's
and
a
more
lot of
detail.
so there's a lot in the world building. There's a lot of what if
Yeah.
Mhm.
contingencies, whether you go there or you interact with it or not. But what if they do?
Yes,
Well, and I
exactly.
would almost
Right.
even add another layer to that, because then when like the three of us, when we write them, then you have to think about, okay, now who's going to be playing this? Because first you're going to have like the world build, like you're going to have the core book for your system that might have the world in it, or the world book for your system, or some kind of a module, and that's going to be like, okay, the sandbox, like Aaron is describing, like all of those what if paths, like what if they go that way instead of this way. But as you're presenting it, you might also be running it at conventions. So then you're going to have that more railroaded path.
Mm,
And if they
right.
go to those what ifs, how do I direct them back? How do I get them back?
Mhm.
Because in a convention, you have a tight window. It's not like you're getting together again next week. You've got
Right.
to finish that game
So
in
you
Yeah.
need,
that.
yeah, so you sort of need to know where the boundaries are. So you need sort of
Yep,
some guardrails
exactly.
because otherwise, right, in theory, you could sprawl forever.
You
Right.
could, and sometimes you wanna do that, like, in your long
Mhm.
form play group, you can do that,
Yeah.
and then
Right. Oh,
you
right.
might also have, like, what's the common thread? So there's the general sandbox, there's the thread that even when they take all the what ifs and the side quests, what's the common thread? And then there's the, okay, but here are these one-off scenarios, or these one shots, or these convention events that you're running, so that people can experience the system or experience your world, and it has to be a little bit more guided.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that, Jerry, because like one of the sins you mentioned, like one of the problems with world
Mhm.
building, one of the sins that people talk about is railroading, where you basically force
Yep.
people to play the game that you want to play unless instead of giving them the freedom to
Right.
explore. But no planning a DM does ever survives their
First
players. Like
contact.
it
Yeah.
just it instantly, almost instantly, all you have to do is mention just like one saucy adjective, and they're just like, oh wait, the waitress has white hair. What is that about? And then suddenly that's what your whole campaign is
Right.
about for the next 3 months.
So it's a
And that's
little it's a little bit of that, like, what is that old saying? Like, man plans and God laughs.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. Yeah,
Right.
your players laugh at your plans
Yep.
for sure. So one of the things I want to say is that not in a one-shot setting like Jerry mentioned, their players kind of know what they're getting into and they're ready to run the adventure that's in front of them. But in a more free-form, traditional kind of game, really what you want to do is just be flexible enough to invent on the fly. So,
Yeah.
as a DM, one of the skills you need to develop is improvisation and yes-anding so that you can follow your players along. The thing that I love about world building is it takes very little to world build. When you think about sort of like, I don't really know how my car works. Like, I don't really know all of the computer systems that are working with each other. Like, that would take 4 years of study for me to know that. But I know I can get into a car and make it run. And it's kind of like magic because it takes me really fast across the city. So all you need is just like a little bit of detail and a little bit of context, and all of a sudden your world feels full. So the goal of world building, I think, is to create the feeling of extraneity of extraneous information that feels like, oh my gosh, I could delve into this. I don't have time right now. There's a prince to save or whatever, so I don't have time right now, but it feels full. And that's the art of the DM, I think, in a nutshell.
Well, and it's
I
also,
love that word extraneity, by the way. I think I'm like, I'm gonna definitely find ways to use that word, Carlos.
but such a big difference, right, between, world building as the DM and world building as the game designer.
Mhm.
because, when you're world building as a game
Mhm.
designer, your goal is to provide it for the DM.
Yeah.
And what I love to do with world building when I'm world building a game is to provide those nuggets that a GM could then pick and say, that's interesting. I want to bring my characters over there. And I
Right.
don't have to define all of them. And again, it's back to those layers. I just leave little clues and I say, oh, this is a renowned lance once used by the dreaded Horse King of Asgabar, now broken, but rumors say it could be restored, right? If a DM wants to play with that,
Right. That
they
could be
can
the
build
whole
an
thing.
entire campaign around that.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly. Money Cook is like the genius of this. Like the Tides of Numenera book, I just love it because it has all these asides on the side where it's just like there's a man made of glass walking the beach and he's ready to answer your questions. Like give me that and I am
Right.
ready to rock,
Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay. All right. Good. So we got to move on. So gaming has begun to transform some of the TV landscape, including Halo, The Last of Us, and Fallout, to name a few. So let's make some distinctions here about first-person shooter games versus RPGs and what these TV translations have done to bring gaming into the mainstream.
all
So
right. I
go
can
ahead.
start with this one
Go.
because Fallout, which you mentioned, very famous video game, but I saw a talk at New York University from the lead designer there who said he started it as an RPG because what he wanted to do was create something that felt more like a home table RPG. So the reason why there's a whole statistic in Fallout with how many grenades you've managed to activate inside of people's pants is because his characters constantly wanted to put grenades in people's pants and activate them. So, RPGs have penetrated games as well as the landscape. Like, basically, a first-person shooter like Fallout is full of RPG statistics. Like, you're growing in different levels, you follow different paths, you basically create classes and things like that. Even though the main mechanic of the game is shooting, you are spending so much time creating your character so it shoots the way that you want to. And that level of customization comes right out of the RPG tradition. In terms of the landscape, one thing that you haven't mentioned, sure, we have like the spin-offs from games, but then we also have the live plays. And live play has become a huge audience. Like we just had Beacon launch, I think, a year ago, which
Carlos, hold on. It's a lot of good stuff here. Let's slow down for a second. For not everyone, including this guy, knows all the words you're saying.
what do you know? Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, it's all good. So just
Probably
for those
live
who don't
plays.
know, so let's do some distinguishing. So live play versus let's just define things a little bit.
Sure. So Critical Role is the quintessential live play show where it's just voice actors around a table playing D&D. And they will tell you, 10 years ago when they were doing this, they were doing it on Geek and Sundry. They didn't think anybody was going to watch because it was just people playing D&D and it was always a nerdy hobby and whatever. But they're great voice actors and they're great actors. So, yeah, I just saw Critical Role Dimension 20 High Rollers are my favorite from Jane. I am addicted to Dimension 20 right now, and I've been watching Campaign 4 and loving it. It's just like these shows are just people around a table playing D&D who are A, hilarious, B, extremely talented, and C, really good gamers. I challenge anybody to find a better moment in any game that they've ever played than when Jester in Critical Role convinces a hag to eat a cursed cupcake and forces that her to basically agree to erase her memory so that she can escape with her party. It's one of the most brilliant, hilarious scenes I've ever seen in any role play, and now everybody gets to enjoy that. Yeah, the cupcake is legendary, Jane.
But you have to then go on from that because obviously if you're going to talk about Critical Role and you're going to talk about the landscape being affected, Critical Role, of course, then created Vox Machina and the Mighty Nine, which are based. So these are animated TV shows, which are directly taken from their live plays. So, they created these characters, they imbued these characters, and they got such a huge following and so much excitement with their characters that they then worked with, professional animators to produce these TV shows. And Vox Machina, what, 3, 4 seasons? I think 4 seasons.
Fourth is coming up, I think, yeah.
Mighty Nine only has the one so far.
But renewed already.
But renewed already.
Yeah.
And they're great. And the reason that they're great is because when you watch them, even if you didn't watch the live play because I knew who Critical Role was. I'd seen bits and pieces, but I honestly have not sat down and watched their live plays. But you can tell the minute you watch the first episode that they know these characters. They have lived these characters. These characters have relationships, they have histories, they have in-jokes. They have this bond that you get in a good game, in a good group, and they're just bringing it to the screen in now two completely different ways, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that there's something to be said about the perfect storm of, because you can look back through the last 50 years that has had D&D and Chaosium and all of that, which is Chaosium. Russ is the folks who make Cthulhu. So that's probably the other biggest like RPG name out there. And honestly, you can look back and there's little sprinklings of this. But I think we had this perfect storm when we had an international pandemic that put us all in our homes, and people had to they started to game online together because, hey, we can't be together physically. So now we're doing this. So the world was kind of like invited into their, living rooms and around their kitchen tables. And so you combine that with, so you get all of this like kind of swell that's happening over the course of the pandemic when we were all staying home. And then you come out of the pandemic and people are desperate for human connection. And what better way to connect, human to human, but around a table playing games, again, bringing that campfire to the table. And I think that 1-2 beat that we experienced as a whole world absolutely fueled the phenomenon we are currently seeing of the I mean, gaming is bigger than books and movies combined
For sure.
right now. And then to take it that next step to put those games on the screen, I think it was just the 1-2 punch of, hey, this is how we're connecting is on a screen. And hey, now we really are desperate to connect in person. And that was able to happen through gaming. And so it lit up.
Great point. So I have one minor question. We have to move on. Where the fuck do you guys find time to do all this goddamn gaming? How does this happen?
That is so hard anymore. I mean, when I was in college, all my friends lived, like half of them lived across the hall from me, the other half were like a block or two away.
Right.
We used to game like all night. We would have like 3-day long gaming marathons, where you're pretty much living on like Mountain Dew and pizza and like, Funyuns and basically, and that's it. In grad school, I would get together with friends. We would game like 2, 3 times a week, but, then, moved away, got married, had kids, life, job. It's so hard to schedule a game anymore. The game that you joined us for once or twice, we still play. We're actually still playing that game, but we play maybe once a month when we manage to find time for all of us to get together. We played with Carlos once, and we were planning to do it again.
We wanted to do it again, but
took us so many times to get to that one time because life intrudes. It's just it's really hard. We did a lot of gaming.
Next time you guys want to play, maybe I want to come back at some point.
I'll tell them. Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so I want to get into.
Go ahead. No, apologize.
No, don't apologize. This whole show is about a bunch of nerds talking shit. So that's what the show is for. All right. So look, I want to get to the other part of tonight's discussion involves the tie-in fiction. So talk to me a little bit about the process. So what comes first, the RPG or the book, or can it be either or? And do you find that the overall narrative thrives more when it starts with a story and becomes a game, or vice versa? So I'll start with Jeri.
Well, definitely I would say can 100% be either or. There's not a right direction to do with this. One of the things that I'll say is if a book starts, if it starts as a book, you're more likely going to end up in like a hero's journey. And so your hero's journey, very typical, it's got your doorways of no return, and you've got your one person who's got to overcome, and the mentor goes away, and this person's going to finish the journey. And now you're going to gamify that, right? So now you're going to have to, when you gamify that, you're going to end up needing to find those other characters that are like around the table, if you will. What else can be played? And You have to actually kind of go from creating that main character, creating factions, if you will, because there's always some sort of a class faction or species breakdown game. Whereas if it starts as a game and then goes to a book, now we usually end up with what they call the heroine's journey, because that actually is like the hero's journey, but it isn't one person, it's multiple people. So, Hunger Games, that's a hero's journey. Harry Potter, that's a heroine's journey. It's not, it's meant to be group play. And so I think that's probably the biggest difference between whether it starts as a around the game table versus if it starts in the pages of a book, because one is meant to be, it's an ensemble, it's a group, it's an interactive, everybody at that table in that story that was told is the hero. They're the hero of their story. And that is always the case with a game. Whereas if it starts in a book, and not that you can't write, I write ensemble heavy fiction. That tends to be the way I lean. But more often than not, you're starting with like your one big main character. And I'm speaking obviously from very adventure-based storytelling, but I think that's the most common kind of storytelling that you're going to find in the gaming world.
Carlos, what do you think?
I think a couple of things. First of all, everything Jeri said, write it down, take it to the bank. And then let me build on that a little bit. So I think the danger of starting with book first is that then you make a game where you're just featuring the characters who've already existed. And that, by definition, limits what a game is designed to do, which is to create a play space, a place where things are created in that moment. I think the problem that can happen when you start with a game is that you then don't concentrate enough about characters in the fiction, and they tend to be shallow, flat, and plot devices or ciphers. So I think each has its own challenges. And I think the way to work around that is to honor each medium as a medium unto itself. So Aaron, you had mentioned the Mighty Nine, for instance, that first, it's a very different one than Vox Machina in that the story, the characters seem much more A, complete, and B, they're not using a plot by plot sort of like design of like we know what's going to happen because it's already happened in the game. Things are very different already in the Mighty Nine. So they took it as a point of inspiration, and I think it's the best work they've done so far. I think the Mighty Nine is the strongest of any of the cartoons that they've done because they're finally feeling the freedom to move away from that character. So I think what we need to do whenever we create art, this is why, books translated into movies always have problems, because it's very hard to honor the medium and still honor, the story and the game at the same time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, for me, like the way I tend to look at it, because I've written them in both directions and I've even written them simultaneously. For me, I try to think of it as, when I'm writing the game, I'm creating the world for anyone to tell their stories in. When I'm writing a book that's based on that game, I'm telling my particular story in that world. And what I know I'm losing when I do that is I'm losing the unpredictability. I'm losing the chaos that comes from having 5, 6 people around a table, all with their own ideas, their own approaches. Somebody drops their Coke and spills it on the table, and so as a result, they say, "Oh, I go ahead and charge," because they're busy trying to pick up,
Right.
stop things up, right? And that changes how everything happens. When you're the only one telling the story, you're God, like everything about the story, and it's much harder to put yourself in different characters and have those characters do things that are completely off the rails.
Right.
Right? It's so much easier to railroad that story, and it's really hard to pull yourself out of it. Whereas when you're gaming, the hard part is reining it in. It's the opposite problem, and they're both amazing. But that's how I try to separate it is I think, okay, if I'm going to tell the story now, this is my particular version of events. Your version may vary and it will vary. This is just the one approach that I'm going to offer. Here's my take on how it went.
All right, so that's actually you're leading into my next question, which is, so what are some of the biggest challenges with writing tie-in fiction for an established RPG? So, Jeri, go ahead.
Oh, you're gonna make me do that one first. Wow. Um, I think there's when something is very established, especially if it is a successful established brand, there are a lot of cooks in that kitchen. And I think that you've got the whoever owns that intellectual property, has a say. There might be other works being created or that are planned. So they're like, oh, you wanted to go that way. Guess what? You can't, because we have this
Oh
other
yeah.
thing that's going to be happening next. And there are just a lot of different voices that are telling you the direction that you have to go, and that's okay, because you have the honor of working on this established IP, and that's wonderful and it's exciting. And but you kind of, you're going to get a lot of that personal creativity, like Aaron, you were talking about, hey, I'm going to tell, this is my story in this thing. You don't get to do that
Yeah.
in an established IP, regardless of which IP. And I know both of you guys have worked on some much larger IPs than some of those that I've worked on. Although Crooked Moon was definitely, we had a lot of voices on that, a lot of great talent on that. But yeah, because when you get that many people that are involved in a project,
Yeah.
it's like everybody, you might be, you're there for your ability to form words. You're not necessarily there for your ideas.
So
Yeah.
just just as a process issue. So you said, hey, they say, oh, I know you wanted to do X, but you can't because of reasons.
Yep.
Does that happen where you have to map out, you're giving them a really detailed blueprint of everything you're going to
Yeah.
do, or or does it also happen where they say, okay, we've said, here are your guardrails. You have to stay within these particular nooks, and then you do a thing that followed what they gave you, and then they
Yeah.
come back and say,
So it
Well,
happens. So it can
I've
do
had it happen
all of it.
both ways, but what about for you guys? I mean, I've had both
Yeah,
Yeah.
situations.
that's exactly that's the thing is there is no one way that this process goes.
Mhm.
Some games you're going to approach, and I totally agree with Jeri. And one of the things is not just voices, but it's also years and years of history in some of these. So I've done a lot of work for Shadowrun. Shadowrun is now on its sixth edition. So when you're working on Shadowrun, you have to be dealing with six editions worth of
Yeah.
material, some of which
Exactly.
contradicts each other because some of which has been thrown out now and replaced with other things, some of which builds on others. But some of these RPGs, you're dealing with one person who really knows the RPG and is the voice behind the RPG and can be very clear with you, very straightforward, and say, here's what you're doing, here's what I want to see, or here, have freedom, do this. Wow, that's great. I'm going to incorporate it. Other times you're dealing with entire committees and you're getting like the Hollywood Notes syndrome where, one person says, oh, I need you to do this. And another says, no, don't do that, and you're getting completely contradictory information. Sometimes it changes people who are working with you in the middle of the process,
Yep.
and you wind up with completely different guidelines than you had to start with. And you have to completely reconfigure everything you've done. Every single RPG is going to be handled differently because it's all about how the company was built, how the RPG was built, who's running it now, what they want to see from it. You know, some of them are amazingly detailed, and they'll say, "Oh, here's our map, and here's our timeline, and here's our
Love
character list, and here's everything we have, and we have spots for you that you could use here, here, here,
Yep.
and here." And that's it. Others are like, tell me a story. And you're like, I want to play with this thing over there. And they go, play with that thing. Go ahead. You know,
Yep.
so different.
Yeah. When I was working on Fool's Gold Into the Bellowing Wilds with Claire, actually, and we were doing a lot of the history and a lot of the god background and things like that. And it was sort of that same thing where the way that that game came about to Hit Point Press is that somebody had an animatic series on YouTube, like they were doing animatics of their live game, and it was hilarious. And so Hit Point Press wanted to do it, but when you're just doing a home game, you have a pile of paper that's this big and it's a mess, and then now you're trying to make this into a commercial RPG. So we were in exactly that situation. It's like, okay, so these gods, they kind of work this way, and like the history kind of does this thing, and then we would throw things in. They would say, oh, that won't work because XYZ protocol or whatever was going, and yeah, it was just that kind of like very interesting IP management. Like, blessings upon all people who have to be the showrunners or the designers who have to make sense out of even like, very good writers who are throwing things at them who are like, well, that can't work, but it's good, but it won't, and trying to make it all into something like a system people can play.
All right, fair enough.
It's
So,
never lack of talent. I would definitely say you said very good writers, Carlos. It's never about the lack of talent on
right.
these projects.
No.
All right. So let me ask. So this is kind of like let's go back to kind of the heart of RPGs. So for each of you, what's one element of RPGs that you think non-gamers don't understand, other than what we've already talked about? What's one element of RPGs that you think non-gamers don't understand that you think would entice them to play if they only had that aha moment? Aaron, what do you think?
So, one of the things for me, and I actually wanted to do like a short book on this years ago, and I never got around to it. I feel like one of the big myths that non-gamers have about gaming and really gamers is that gamers are antisocial, poorly socialized, don't know how to relate to other people, and that's why we sit around a table and we play these games. And I think that, what people discover when they come to a game and they come to a game group is that gaming is socializing, and that gamers, you're really presenting an opportunity to not just socialize with each other as players, but also to experience characters and situations that you don't get to in real life.
Mm.
And it's really a chance to play things that you would not be able to play otherwise, to experience things that you would not be able to experience. And I think it's sort of an eye-opening experience, I think, for people, when they come to that and they go, wow, this is actually like, it's incredibly social, but it's also incredibly inclusive and incredibly diverse. And it really gives you the opportunity to see things from somebody else's perspective.
So gamers are people too.
Yeah, and and very skilled at learning how to adapt to situations.
Yeah. Cool. All right. That's actually that's an I hadn't, I hadn't thought of it from that perspective, the idea that you're going to go through just because of the challenges involved and the creativity and the randomness
Yeah.
and the group situation that you have to figure out in real time how to handle change, conflict,
Yes.
fear, anxiety, uncertainty. I mean, those are real world, elements of just of being outside the gaming world, but
Yeah.
it's sort of in this intimate experience. So you kind of get to be intimate and expansive with other people all at the same time. And you have to, like, in a way, and pardon my language, you got to work through your shit in real time.
You do, and it's, in corporate world, right? People role play scenarios, that's a
Yes,
big
right.
thing,
That's right.
right? But what RPGs let you do is they let you separate that from your reality. So
Yeah.
you're not playing it with your coworker Joe and your other
Right.
coworker, Eileen. You're playing it with the orc and the troll,
Right.
and you're a dwarf. And so you can really explore those situations in ways that you would not be comfortable doing,
Right.
in a real world setting with
Right.
regular people,
Right.
playing regular characters. Like
Right.
it really
Right.
frees you.
All right.
Well, and
Jeri.
to
Yeah.
build on that, like what you're saying about separating that and you're really getting to play that, that's actually feeds into exactly what I think is that piece that sometimes people don't realize about role-playing games is that you can just do it. You want to do the
Yeah.
thing? Okay, try
Right.
to do the thing.
Yeah.
And I know that there's some variance in different systems. Like I tend to lean towards systems that are really heavy in that theater of the mind stuff that you were saying, Carlos. That's my jam. I prefer that to like the super crunchy number ones. And when people come and they sit and if they're sitting at a convention, it's their first time sitting at a table to play a game, their friend dragged them. They're like, I've never done this before. They're really nervous and they're like, well, I want to try to throw my rope over that wall and climb. I
Right.
say, okay. And then you see that moment when it clicks when they're like, oh, I can just tell you my ideas and we can try to make them happen. And
Right. So
again, Carlos talks
it's
about
the
the game
safety to be able to
master.
take chances that you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
that you wouldn't normally. I mean, of course, you're not going to normally be like throwing a rope over an orc wall, but my point is that you can feel the freedom to take a chance to experiment
Yeah.
with.
To use your imagination and just
Yeah,
try
right.
whatever you want to
Yeah.
try. And
Okay.
sometimes it's a
Yep.
combat
All right,
thing. And
I'm sorry. I hate to cut you off,
sorry.
but we're
No, no,
getting
no.
short on time. Carlos, any last thoughts? If not, I got to move on.
Yeah, but so
Keep it short.
the Bathos, pathos, and tragedy. Like these are things that are the foundations of art, and you get all of these with you creating it and you reading it at the same time. You're both reader and creator at the same time. It's one of the most complete art forms in that way.
All right, that was great. Now it's a special segment where
That's
on the
fixing
show where
trigger.
we spin the wheel. On the wheel are 7 possible categories, most of which I created just for tonight's show. Wherever it lands is what you get, and the categories are Secret Superstitious, Fine Dining, D&W, The Dream Team, Marathon Twist, Teeth or Toes, and 2 out of 3 ain't bad. All right, Carlos, you're up first. You ready?
Ready?
All right,
I have
let's
no
do
idea. Are
it.
you going to ask a question or like
All
what?
right, here we
Yes.
go. And what do we got for you? You got Secret Superstitious. All right. Even the most strident naysayers will admit in private that they have at least one superstition. What's yours?
You might have asked the wrong person. I'm trying to think about like what am I superstitious about? Oh my gosh. I will say that especially like in games and stuff like that, I will definitely consistently put dice in dice jail if they are just fucking with me. That is, like if a die just keeps rolling badly, I believe in punishing. This comes right from my, Cuban tradition. Like Cuban traditions with their gods is very hands on. Like my grandmother had ripped the heads off of saints when they behaved too badly and stuff like that. So yeah, put them in dice jail, punish them, let them think about what they've done wrong.
All right, bad dice, bad dice. All right,
Yes.
Jeri, you're up next. All right, what do we got? All right, round and round. No whammies. Where does she land? And you get, the Dream Team. Okay, what have we got here? What nonsense did I come up with today? Okay, you can sign up for a full day of gaming with 4 other players. You can pick any 4 players, dead or alive, to join you on your day of gaming. Who is on your RPG Dream Team?
Oh God, this is so hard. Okay.
And we'll
Honestly,
totally hold it against you if you don't pick us. So just so you know, just throwing it out there.
I have to have 4. You said 4
Yep.
people.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm probably going to pick. I'm going to pick all like writers because I just love the creative. So I'm definitely going to be like James S.A. Corey, which of course is actually 2 people.
Two
That's
people, right? Yeah.
like
Yes,
Daniel and
the
Ty. They
Expanse.
are at that table for sure. I'm going to pick J.R.R. Tolkien because let's get the original
Yeah.
characters. And I'm going to pick C.S. Lewis.
Okay. Oh, okay, fair enough. All right, Aaron, you ready? Here we go. Let's see. I know which one I wanted to roll on, but we'll see what happens.
Oh, okay. Well, we can't read it from the
Okay.
glare, so you can just
Okay,
tell
so
me.
you get fine dining. Oh,
Okay.
you're gonna hate this.
Of course. I
Your
usually do.
your off-world RPG is populated by an alien race with a unique diet. If you don't dine with them, your character will be killed on the spot and you're out of the game. The menu choices are slugs and gravel or crunchy boogers. Which one do you chow down on?
Slugs and gravel.
Slugs and gravel. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think I could. I don't think I could manage the other one.
Crunchy boogers are great. Are you kidding me? Oh, I mean, yeah, of course.
You're like, who's crunchy boogers?
That's true. That's a good point.
Who
You're
knows?
right.
Who knows? Yeah. Okay. All right. That was awesome. Now we're going to pick your poison. I got 3 choices for you, A, B, or C. And I'm not going to tell you what's behind each, but I will say that they're all related to tonight's theme. Okay. So, Aaron, you were up last. Now you're up first. A, B, or C?
I always go for A because.
Okay. Well, you know this kind of topic. I'm going to give you some truth serum. I'm a truth serum. I got 10 questions. Answer quickly. Here we go. Favorite RPG you did not create?
Amber.
Most overrated RPG?
Ooh, Champions.
Most underrated RPG?
Amber.
Most difficult RPG game to learn how to play that's fun once you get the hang of it?
Champions.
Yeah, Champions is hard.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite RPG tie-in fiction you had no involvement with?
Ooh, wow. that's a tough one. Favorite RPG fiction I had no involvement with. Uh, Dragonlance.
Okay, RPG tie-in fiction you'd like to write that you've never written if you had the chance.
Ooh, I've written a bunch. Who have I not written for? Crap. I don't know.
Pick one.
Uh, 7C, actually.
Okay, you can only pick one: writing RPG tie-in fiction or playing RPG games.
Playing games.
Weirdest RPG you ever played?
Oh, weirdest RPG I ever played. Probably Tune.
Okay.
Oh yeah, good one.
Favorite character from any RPG or its tie-in fiction that you did not create?
Ooh. Uh, uh, what's the name of the cleric from Vox Machina?
Pike?
Pike.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Pike.
All right. RPG you did not write or create, you'd most like to see adapted into film or TV.
Ooh. Did not write or well, I've written for it.
No
I'll say it
involvement.
anyway. Deadlands.
All right.
Mm.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. So Jerry, you're
Oh,
up.
hard! Oh my gosh.
Jerry,
Those
you're
were hard.
okay. Okay, Carlos, you're up next. You got B or C.
Wow, I got to do C for Carlos.
Okay.
So I did
All
A.
right. All right. So this is a twist on a question I've done many times, but this has a different spin to it. It has a little bit of a long wind up, so stick with me.
Okay, doke.
I'm going to give you two options that will define the rest of your RPG career. You can only pick one. Here are the two options. Your next RPG tie-in is an international bestseller. You win every award there is. You make tons of money. Your RPG tie-in gets made into a movie that wins the Academy Award for Best Picture. You can ride that success forever. You will always be that RPG writer. However, the price of that success means you have to give up writing and gaming forever. You've written your last RPG and you've played your last game.
B.
Oh no, or
Like, I already
Who
know.
cares? Yeah.
or you keep writing RPGs and tie-in fiction as you've always done. You are generally well respected, and whatever level of financial compensation you've gotten up until this point from those RPG creations is the top of the mountain. Given these two choices, what career path do you pick?
Definitely.
RPG of a lifetime or steady as she goes?
Steady as she goes, 100%. Like,
Okay.
what is fame?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, what is fame and money and success and
Yeah.
all that good stuff? That's all good. All
Yeah,
right.
that's a good.
That's okay. All right. So
I'd rather
Jerry,
throw a gnome.
there you go. Okay. So for you, it's do or die. You have been transported from your life today into a real life RPG where that world is as real to you as this one. If you win the game, you get to come home, but every friend and ally you make in the RPG dies for real, even if that means hundreds, millions, or billions of people and creatures. Or you can remain in the RPG realm forever, continuing to fight and quest and adventure amongst your RPG friends and allies, but no one from your life today will ever know what happened to you, where you are, or why. So
Well, I
what's
got
your
the nice one.
choice?
Wow.
Do or die?
Oh, this is like why I get the train question. Who are you?
Yeah, exactly. You got the
Yeah,
trolley
you got the
problem.
worst one, definitely. Yeah.
This is also the plot of
Oh,
Expedition 33,
okay.
basically.
Well, I'm a mother and grandmother, and so I have no choice but to kill the people in the RPG. I gotta, because that's otherwise I lose all of my family and my loved ones. So I have, yeah, sorry.
All right.
I'm
Yeah.
All right. All right.
gotta,
So you're a galactic murderer. Fair enough. Okay. All good.
I am. I just killed for real everybody in the expanse. That's
Uh,
who is dying in my
yeah.
world.
Yeah.
So,
I knew you'd hate that.
ugh, that was awful.
Would like that. Come on.
I know. That's why I did it. Okay. All right. Let's see if we have any questions from the audience. Let's see. We got a couple of comments here. What do we say here? From James, you got, let's see. What do we got? I'm working with a doctor, professor, therapist that has set up a nonprofit to form a safe space and a gaming environment. He's had a location with video game station, board games, and he wants to do RPGs as well. This is for community people who love games and troubled teams. Do you have
Oh.
any advice for how gaming, particular RPGs, might help him? I know it can be very therapeutic, like Russ was saying.
This is huge. There are a lot of organizations, there's been a lot of studies on how this helps with PTSD, socialization, folks struggling that are on the spectrum. I think you need to set some really great guidelines, and there should be safety cards. What are people sensitive about? What do they not want to experience in their gaming experience?
Yeah.
And you also have to have a space that is going to be like no drinking DMs, and like, so it should be like a clean space as far as like alcohol and smoking and other things that people could be doing in that space. It should be clean. It should be everybody can express their safety from the
Yeah.
start.
Yeah, I would say that one of the things, absolutely. I would say one of the things to think about is, some RPGs are better suited for more cooperative styles of gaming that are more low stakes. And especially right now, with the emphasis on cozies in fiction and gaming, you get a
Bingo.
lot of cozy RPGs, which are all about found family. They're all about community building. They're all about working together and finding yourself and your confidence and your safe space. That kind of game really would fit here. What you don't want is you don't want something like, say, Warhammer, which is by its nature very dark, very gritty, very
Right.
violent.
Right.
It's not a good fit. It's going to be very triggery for people, but there are a lot of RPGs out there that will work really well for this. Um, Suggestions on specific RPGs. Um,
If you want something recent, I might suggest the Dagger Heart system because it's very flexible, but it comes with
hmm,
a sort of like there's at least one campaign that they've done that's very cozy, but it's also very flexible. So definitely take what Aaron said to heart, but at the same time, remember it has to be fun or nobody's going to want to play. So
yeah, yeah.
if
Oh,
it's like
absolutely.
too cozy and people don't want to play cozy, like then it's going
Yeah.
to fall flat. So it's a really delicate question. I think the best thing you can do is to talk to people who are already doing it. So I have a friend, Zach Clay, who's a DM for the library system of San Francisco, and he works with kids all the time. And DMing for kids has its challenges, but like once you get it down, it can be one of the best experiences that they're going to have. So yeah, I would say like the big thing to do right now is informational interviews to talk to people who are doing it right now because it's we can give little answers, but you need big answers for this.
Okay, fair enough. All right, guys. So we're coming to the end. So what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to share my screen. I got some goodies for everyone, and just bear with me 1 minute.
I like goodies.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so Aaron,
Yes.
what do we got here? What are we looking at?
This is the first book in my cozy urban fantasy series about a mild-mannered Yeti in Minneapolis, St. Paul, who comes out of the forest he's been living in, tries to lose himself in the Twin Cities, and discovers an entire supernatural community he had no idea it existed. And it is very, very cozy. It is very much about found family, very much about finding his place in the world.
All right, very good. And where can we find it?
It is from eSpec Books. You can find it through them, through their imprint Paradoxa Press. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, pretty much anywhere.
All right, sounds good. All right, folks, if you want some Yeti adventure, this is your one. This is your book. All right, so what do we got here?
This is Sal and Gabby Breaks the Universe. This is the book that won the Poodle Barrel Prey Award for 2020. It's a book about Sal Villon, who can very much like in a multiverse, into the Spider-Verse kind of way, reach into other universes and grab shit that he likes. And at one point, like it has this sort of like comedic side to it, but he really just wants to find a universe where his mother is still alive. So he begins basically poking holes in his own universe, searching for one where maybe he can get a mom back. But of course, it all goes horribly awry. And one of the things he's trying to do is to keep all of the secret. And Gabby Real at his school, smartest school in school, is hot on his track. So will she figure it out? Will he get his mom? This is Sal and Gabby Break the Universe.
All right, and where can people find it?
Wherever books are sold.
All right, sounds good. Okay, Jerry, what do we got here?
This is the first in my 5-book hard sci-fi series. It uses a globally diverse cast of characters to walk us through the world of Earth after the melt. And it is going to be that very gritty, dark geopolitical sci-fi. That's kind of my brand. So if that's where you like to go,
Mm-hmm.
that's where this will take you.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, you're talking my kind of talk. All right. And as for me, so Prism. For those of you who don't know, Prism is an 80s set. Really, it comes down to it's a little bit. Think of Warehouse 13 on as a global espionage thriller, where you've got these shards have fallen from space, scattered all over the earth, and who knows? They do all sorts of things that no one really knows. And Team Prism has decided these things are just too dangerous to mess with, and they got to take them and lock them up in a vault. So God knows if they'll blow up the earth. And our other team, Refract, says no, no, no. But what if they cure cancer and have free energy for the whole world? And well, it's a battle for who gets them first, and I want to give a lot of credit to my man Aaron for designing the cover and the interior, and he had the fortune or misfortune to write the inaugural story, which is not easy to do when starting off a new universe. So he really got us started, and we've got about a dozen stories in there. And if you like big, epic set piece finales, well, that's kind of my specialty, and I did that. And by the way, pardon my language again, but I kind of fuck some shit up. So a little bit.
A little bit.
So if you like, so there's a combination of standalone adventures and an overarching arc, and there's a lot of great stuff in there. So it's spy capers and sci-fi and espionage and action and comedy and thriller all rolled into one. And God willing, we're going to do another one. Prism is available through Crazy 8 Press and available on Amazon. All right, guys, that is our show. I want to thank my guests, Aaron and Jeri and Carlos, for coming on and talking about RPGs and tie-in fiction. And I want to thank everyone who's watching at home. I hope you had a great time. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow me on social media and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm your host, Russ Colchamiro. And as always, be kind, be gentle, be generous of spirit. And for God's sakes, go read a book and go play a game. And I'll see you all in 2 weeks. All right. Bye now, guys. And I'll see you next time. Okay.